This happened around 10 years ago, in 2008 or 2009. I was visiting my grandmother in a rural section of Lake of the Ozarks, near a small town with a hilarious name where I went to high school. I was very familiar with the area, and when visiting my grandmother I would often walk into town, taking backwood trails until I reached the main road going into the town. Very rarely someone would stop and offer a ride, and normally I would accept. It's a small town in a rural area where everyone mostly knows everyone else, so I wouldn't even look up until I was getting in the vehicle. I stopped accepting rides after this. I had just come out of the woods and was walking along the side of the road. I was still maybe a mile or two out of town, enjoying my walk. An older blue Ford Taurus pulls up next to me. The driver rolls down the passenger window.
Need a ride?
I get in and get a good look at my driver. The man looked like a greasier version of Charles Manson. Flat, stringy brown hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in over a week. He had piercings and wild blue eyes. Something about him rang every alarm bell in my body, and I went to get back out of the car, but we were already in motion. Instead, I began to look around the vehicle. The front is relatively normal and even clean. The back seat is covered with a blanket. On top of the blanket is something that takes up nearly the entire back seat, wrapped in a tarp. Whatever it is stands to about 1.5 feet off the back seat. On top of all of this, there is a big, black shaggy dog that is staring right through me.
What are you doing here?
The question snapped me back to the front seat. I'm sorry, what? He's staring at me instead of the road.
What are you doing here?
Oh, I say, laughing a little out of nervousness. I'm visiting my grandmother. I live in College Town about 90 miles from here, and I'm on my way to see some old friends. He frowns and states flatly,
Why are you here?
I frown a little, everything in me flashing in red. I just told you. My tension is rising visibly. The dog gives a low growl from the back seat. We are passing the sign for the county line. There is a gas station coming up that marks the beginning of the town. He is still staring at me.
Why the fuck are you here? Why are you here? Why are you here? Why the fuck are you here?
He screams out of nowhere, slamming his hands on the steering wheel. I'm huddled against the door, shaking. He pulls into the gas station.
Give me your glasses.
Statement, not question. No emotion. Without question, I hand them over.
Wait here.
He goes into the store. I'm frozen in place, shaking and trying to get my arms or legs to work, trying to start breathing again. I know whatever the hell is going on, I need to get out fast. The dog gave another low growl, and that snapped me into action. I get up, almost rolling out of the car. Shakily, I walk into the store, and in an equally shaky voice say to the guy, This is close enough to where I am going. I would like my glasses now, please. My eyesight is very poor, but I could feel the intensity of the glare he gave me. I think the cashier could too, because she took a couple of steps back, closer to the store phone. Silently, he hands my glasses to me, continues to stare daggers at me as I put them on, and walks out of the store without saying a word to either of us. The cashier stares at me, clearly freaked out.
What the fuck was that?
She asks me. The adrenaline of the situation has started to wear off, and the real gravity started to sink in on me. Tears are beginning to silently course down my face. Can I use your phone, please? I ask her. She nods, and wordlessly hands it to me with a box of tissues. She tells me I can go into the manager's office to make my phone call and take as much time as I need. I thank her, go back, and let my friends know what just happened. I also tell them I will be cutting through the woods to get to them because I don't want to see this guy ever again, and that I will be coming out behind the house. I took a few minutes to breathe and relax after I hung up. When I went back out, the cashier asked if I was okay and if there was anything she could do for me. I thanked her again and told her no. I asked if she knew the guy. She had never seen him before and didn't think he was from the area. That shook me even more. I give her my friend's phone number and ask her to call them if he comes back. I left and cut through the woods to my friend's house. We had a great afternoon, and when I was ready to leave, they gave me a ride home. At the time it didn't bother me as much, but the longer I've had to think about it, the more curious I am about the back seat. That dog wasn't moving from on top of it unless the guy told him to. I try not to think about what was under the tarp too much. It looked just like how someone lying in the fetal position looks like from behind. Back in the early 1990s, when I was about 2, my mom and I, my aunt and cousin, and my other aunt, Dee for story's sake, went to Mackinac Island for the weekend. We were driving up I-75 to the bridge and pulled off the highway at a rest area so my Aunt Dee could use the bathroom. There was no one else at the rest area except for a lone truck, and it was starting to get dark around. The truck was just sitting at the back of the rest area, running, but had the lights turned off, and my aunt could see a pretty large man with glasses and a mustache just chilling in it. She was a little uneasy about it, but went into the restroom anyways. Sure enough, this lunatic gets out of his truck and walks towards the same restroom. Remember, it was just 2 other young women and toddlers. This was before cell phones were prevalent. My Aunt Dee had a gut feeling that something was off, so she sat in the stall for a few seconds to make sure everything was okay. The large man comes into the bathroom and just stands in front of my aunt's stall, so she could see his boots under the door. She busts the stall door open, knocking him back, and runs out screaming. She comes back to our truck, and the man is in pursuit. My mom swung the front door open for her, and she makes it in with a few seconds to spare before the guy would have been able to grab her. We peel out and get on the highway. Apparently, he was persistent because he pursued our truck for a good 10 miles before we were able to lose him. We got all of his features written down in the process though, including the model of his truck. About a year after that incident, the body of a woman beaten to death was found at that same rest stop. I'm not sure if they found the guy or not. This happened about 6 years ago. It's a story I've told many times and will continue to tell because honestly it was probably the closest I've ever been to getting killed, or if not killed, then kidnapped or something really horrible. It was the summer of 2012. Me and my best friend were hitchhiking around Eastern Europe with no money. We were making our way towards Poland from the Baltics and happened to hitch a lift into Lithuania from the Latvian border. The dude who picked us up was really friendly, but he was ultimately going in a different direction, and so dropped us off at this spot that he said was really good for hitching. It was a large concrete area by the side of a road, in the middle of the Lithuanian countryside, probably designed for truckers to pull in and take a nap. On one side of the road there were endless cornfields, and on the other were some woods. It was pretty late at evening and there was no traffic anywhere, so we decided to call it a night, crossed the road towards the edge of the woods, and got out sleeping bags, food, etc. by this small dirt mound near the road. As we were unwinding, we heard a woman screaming from across the road. We immediately ran back across to see what was going on. We could make out 2 men running away into the cornfields. We stood there in shock, and a few moments later, a car pulled out of the cornfields and sped off into the distance. We still stood there in shock, wondering what to do. A few moments later, a policeman showed up. He asked us questions in Lithuanian, and we explained to him in English that we were just hitchhikers.
He said to us, "This is a very dangerous place. You shouldn't be here."
Then proceeded to roll up the window and drive back the way he came. We were pretty spooked at this point, so we crossed the road back to our bags by the dirt mound on the edge of the woods. It was nighttime by this point, and after a while nothing happened. We were still a bit scared and couldn't really sleep. Then, in the dead of night, in the woods next to us, we could hear footsteps cracking the twigs and branches of the woods. They slowly got closer and closer towards us and eventually stopped. We heard incessant whispering for a few moments, then heard the footsteps and twig snapping move slowly away from us. Neither of us needed to say anything to each other. We both knew what had happened. At this point, we were petrified. My friend took out his penknife as we laid there. I remember saying to him, "See you in hell, Connor," and him saying it back to me. An hour or two passed, and we were still laying there taking turns with the knife, in case we got attacked from different angles, not knowing what was going to happen. After a while, nothing happened. The exhaustion kicked in and we passed out. Suddenly, we were abruptly awoken early in the morning by the sound of a car really aggressively pulling up on the road. We heard car doors slam and footsteps stomping towards us really quickly. As we were laying down and behind a mound, we couldn't see them, but we could just feel they were inches away from us. I'll never forget the fear I felt at that moment. My whole body froze, and I simply thought, "This is it." They stopped, and we heard a really angry argument in Lithuanian between two men. It stopped after what felt like an eternity, but in reality was probably 30 or 60 seconds. They stomped back to the car and drove off. I almost vomited with relief. We immediately got up, packed our bags, and started walking as far as possible from that area and started hitchhiking. We're not sure what we were privy to that night. We don't think it was rape, or else there would have been more screams. We think it was probably a murder. The perpetrators were watching us from the woods, whispering. They were seconds away from either killing us or kidnapping us the next morning. This happened 6 years ago, and it's still so surreal thinking that this happened and that we got away unscathed. For all we know, we could be a pile of bones in some unknown Lithuanian forest.